this is the best line in the whole movie. Arnold takes the camera and he says,
"You cold-blooded bastard. I'll tell you what I think of it. I live to see you eat that contract. But I hope you leave enough room for my fist because I'm going to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine!" Ah!
And every single time I hear that line, I bust out laughing because Arnold's accent, like, it breaks in it. Like, he's saying spine, but it sounds like swine. It's one of my absolute favorites. It's so good. Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
Let's hear it for Casual Murder. Yay.
Yay, Casual Murder. Yay, discount Hunger Games. Or depending on how you view it, this is the original Hunger Games. I kind of like to think about that. Hunger Games or Battle Royale. I've heard it compared to as both of them. But we're talking about a very special movie this week. Part 2 of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
The sequel sounds better.
I'll stop you, Nick, like a chickens. One of my favorite lines in this movie. We were talking about The Running Man from, I believe, what was this, 1987? 88?
87, yeah.
87.
This is the same year as Predator. So we're
yeah, boy,
to the same year.
87 was a big year for Arnold Schwarzenegger. You got Predator and you got the Hunger Games, not the Hunger Games, the Running Man. And boy, oh boy, you've got fun. This, John, I got to tell you, this is got to be, along with Total Recall, my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. And it used to not be. Like, I remember watching this. My dad watched this one time. And I was like, what is this fucking ridiculous movie? And he was like, oh, it's The Running Man. It's a classic. And I'm like, oh, well, I've never seen it. And so we watched it, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, I remember watching this on vacation, being like, this is great. Because prior to that, I'd only seen like Total Recall and Terminator and all the normal Arnold movies. But John, what about you? When was the first time you saw The Running Man?
I think I was the perfect age. I was somewhere between like 10 to 12. And this movie for like a 10 to 12-year-old boy it's just sugar. You know, it's so ridiculous, so over the top, so cartoonish, so flippant about death and mayhem. You know, it reminded me very much as being a obsessive wrestling fan. This is kind of like wrestling as an action movie.
Oh, I totally agree. And honestly, I kept thinking about WWF and WWE while watching this movie. I'm like, this is quite literally playing like at one of those shows. Like, yeah. I distinctly remember. Funny note about this. So this is based off of a book.
Well, yeah, loosely.
Now we know why this. Once you realize who made this book, who's the author of the book, The Running Man, you're like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. So this is authored by Richard Bachman, and you might not know who the hell that is, but Richard Bachman is the pen name for one Stephen King.
This maybe next to Lawnmower Man might be the loosest adaptation I've seen of one of his works. I mean, it is like people have to fight for their lives, but it is not remotely like it's portrayed in this movie.
No, but I just find it funny that like this is, you know, King wrote the book in 1982, and like the 80s and Stephen King, there was a time that this was like off the wall Stephen King, right?
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
I was gonna say this is like right around the Maximum Overdrive time period where he's looking very cokeheadish, allegedly. Just saying that, allegedly, although he has commented about it too, so it's not really an allegedly thing. But yeah, you can kind of tell like, oh yeah, this is very much in the vein of a coke-fueled fever dream. But this apparently is kind of historical fiction because this takes place in 2017 and we're at 2024.
You know, it kind of like reminded me of 2020 when we were in the pandemic, but we also had like the Floyd protests and stuff going on at the same time. So it was like, yeah, that actually almost fits.
Yeah, no, I upon rewatching this, I totally was going like, yeah, no, we're either a little bit late to that benchmark of 2017 dystopian future, because a lot of it feels very like we're close. Like the whole idea of media being so much an opioid of the masses, like you can literally replace the Running Man with TikTok and you'll get a similar kind of effect here. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, but I would say that, like, and it's no fault of their own because it's 1987, but the idea that we'd still really be into like that level of cable television, like,
yeah,
whoops, sorry guys.
Well, I mean, they had no idea about the internet. I mean, that was not, I mean, they knew about the internet, but it was not to the extent that it is now, where all of our media is delivered that way. But I just mean like the whole idea of media basically hiding and twisting the idea of fact. Like this is so clearly pulled out of stuff. Like we've seen what happens when, you know, facts are run through the spin of media and how distorted it can get sometimes. I'm not talking about necessarily fake news. I'm talking about just the idea of certain agendas pushing and manipulating facts to meet certain needs. You know, I think as consumers of media, we can see that. And depending on what channel you watch, you might get certain twist of a different thing. Maybe if you're watching MSNBC, you're getting a left-leaning thing. If you're watching Fox News, you're getting a right-leaning thing. So, I mean, it's all the media, but it's twisting the facts and distorting them to fit the needs of the owners, if you will, right? And it seems very much like in The Running Man, we're getting a preview of that.
Yeah, because for those who are maybe not as initiated or haven't seen it in a long time, Arnold is framed for a crime he didn't commit, and then they just go on this propaganda attack like he's this horrific butcher,
the butcher of Bakersfield.
Yeah. And it, you know, it reminds me of, and here's where we're probably going to get another nasty review.
It's okay,
because I'm about to get political, but I were at the DNC the other day. They had the Central Park 5, and Donald Trump, way back in, it was either early 90s or 80s, was talking about how these guys were these vicious criminal rapists, maniac, and people believed that hype. Turns out they didn't do jack shit. So yeah, it is about how certain people can try to manipulate and contort to their own realities for their own agendas. That is nothing new, but it is getting a lot easier in our modern day to pull that kind of thing off.
Yeah. And honestly, John, like, again, kind of not trying to belabor this point, but I think it's worth talking about because this movie does have a political undertone. But I mean, you know, the whole idea of the Running Man is to pacify the audience. That is what its job is to do. It's not to entertain them. It's to pacify them so they're not arguing about things like, you know, the fact their rights are taken away or the lack of food or the forever wars. And I see, and I don't honestly, I remember watching this and going like, oh yeah, that could never happen here. And the fact of the matter is, and I don't know, John, if you kind of see this, I don't feel that way anymore. And I feel like we're either there or we're one step away, like, well, from there.
Keep them ignorant, complacent, and on the brink of starvation. You know, don't give them the facts they need. Give them a streaming service with 1,000 movies, you know, and keep them hungry to the point where they don't have enough energy to fight, and you have exactly what you need. Don't complain about not having a livable wage or a house you can afford. Look, you got Disney Plus. You can watch Mickey whenever you want.
Or my favorite is the divide them strategy. Divide them by the have-nots. Divide them by, you know, giving them people access to entertainment while the other people are starving. You know, but still give the starving people the ability to watch the show so that they don't ask too many questions. Again, I don't mean to make this a political show. That's not what our goal is. But the movie, The Running Man, you kind of have to point to it a little bit. That's kind of its crux.
It's true. Okay? You know, and it is easy to overlook it because this movie is so cartoonish and flippant. And, you know, it's Arnold. So let's face it, Arnold's not an actor. The man's a movie star. And this is like a huge piece of that puzzle of, yeah, he wasn't hired because of his great Shakespearean training. He was hired so he could do his zippy one-liners and look like a Greek god.
Very true. Very true. And this movie is full of zippy one-liners. Some of the best zippy one-liners, in my opinion, in all of Arnold's movies. Like, there are so many in this one. If you thought Predator had some good ones in there, like, you know, mostly of them not necessarily coming from Arnold, except for if it bleeds, we can kill it, which is my favorite one of his. But, you know, this one is where you get the I'll be back. I think this might be the first time he says I'll be back outside of Terminator.
Outside of Terminator, yeah.
Yeah, outside of Terminator. Because Terminator is really where that I'll be back came from. But this is where you get the moment in the movie where he stops and he says I'll be back and kind of looks at the camera like, I said the line, folks.
Wink.
Wink. But so Arnold, as John mentioned, is Ben Richards. He is the butcher of Bakersfield. He's a cop. And the movie opens up with Arnold in a helicopter kind of talking to his commanding officer and saying, hey, yeah, there's a food riot in progress. And his commanding officer basically tells him, yeah, go murder all of those people. And Arnold, being Arnold because he's the hero in this movie, decides, I'm not going to do that. And as John had mentioned, he is framed. He is sent to a prison in which he meets Yaphet Kotto and a very skinny man who dies very shortly in the movie. And they escape, but he's the nerdy guy because you got to have a nerdy guy in this movie.
And, and that's got to have a tech savvy guy.
You got to have a tech savvy guy who is a string being. You're like, that guy would die first in The Running Man. And sure enough, I think he dies second.
Yeah.
I think Yaphet Kotto gets it first, which I'm like, come on, that man should survive longer. I mean, it's Yaphet Kotto. He was in Freddy's Dead, Final Nightmare. But yeah, they escape the prison and are on the run. And Arnold doesn't want to have anything to do with the resistance because there's a whole resistance that's undergoing with this, where there are people who are trying to fight back, but they need to find the uplink to the ICB. Was it ICB? ICS satellite. That's it. ICB is from Scrooge, not this movie. But I get them mixed up. But yeah, the ICS satellite which is the mega cable operator that broadcasts the Hunger Games, and they want to find that uplink so they can expose the government and everything that they're doing. But Arnold's like, fuck that shit. I want to go home, hang out with my brother, and get out of town. But that doesn't happen because Arnold, there is no brother. His brother's sent to a re-education camp, and he basically abducts a woman.
Casual misogyny.
Casual misogyny. Yeah. What did you think about the way that he like just shows up in this woman's apartment and kind of captures her?
Brian, what I've learned is that nothing turns a woman on more than when you are a complete stranger, break into her home, and show your unspeakable physical strength so that she knows at any moment you could murder her violently. Women love that.
I mean, I didn't know that. I mean, I should have known that.
Tale is old as time.
Beauty and the Arnold. But yeah, Amber, played by Maria Conchita Alonso, she literally, the first time we see her, she is working out in a nightie. Not kidding when I say this. She's in a nightie. Arnold has her like trapped against like a workout bench. And she's like, they're going to get you. They're, and he literally lifts up the entire workout bench, which just bolted to the floor. And just, yeah, as John mentioned, just shows his Hulk strength, which just turned her on completely.
And she's like, this seems like a guy I can trust.
Yeah, especially after, he uses her as a hostage to get through the airport, which we can tell that in this future, 9/11 didn't happen because he got through airport security way easy. And should be. I recently went through airport security myself because I was traveling to Podcast Movement, and not the easiest time. Like, they actually brought the K9 unit out, which I was the first time I'd ever seen that. Have you ever been to the airport, John, where they bring the K9 unit out?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, But no, in this future, very easy. All you needed to do was have an honest face and, look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's wanted for, all manner of crimes. And he gets right through because he wears a Hawaiian shirt and a hat.
Yeah, he's clearly a fun guy.
He's clearly a fun guy who's not Ben Richards, but clearly that doesn't work. Amber gives him up. He gets captured. And this is where we meet the villain, Richard Dawson.
Which, look, I know that he is technically an actor as well, but I always just knew him as a game show host.
Because that's what he is.
Yeah. Like Family Feud, for those who are not initiated, he was Steve Harvey about 35 years ago. But the thing is, he steals the show. He is so good in this movie.
Oh, man. He plays a evil version of himself. That is his job in this movie, is to play an evil version of his Family Feud character. And I never watched him when he did host Family Feud, but I knew that, he was a Hallmark game show host, and he is one of the best parts of this movie as Damon Killian, because he is so evil, but it's so flippant in his evil ways. He's not out to do this for any type of world domination like you would see in any other Arnold movie. He's not out to do this because he's Lex Luthor. No, he's out for ratings.
Yeah. Hey, it's show business. Yeah.
That's literally all this man wants is ratings. And he views Ben Richards, as the best person to put in the Running Man. So instead of sending him back to prison, Killian it basically gives him a contract, says well, if you do the Running Man game, I won't have your friends, who we've also captured, Yaphet Kotto and Nerdy McSpeckles. We won't throw him in the Running Man, but you'll just do it. And if you survive the 4 quadrants and survive all the stalkers, then you'll go home free. Spoilers, no one goes home free. Right, John?
Right. Which, it seems odd to me that he would want somebody who looks like they could defend themselves in there. You'd think that they want to put weak, hungry people with osteoporosis in there, not somebody that could actually stand up to the stalkers, which is what, these guys on the game show are called. But one thing that really bothered me about this movie was, and I only thought about this rewatching it for this episode, no stalker has ever lost in the history of this show. Why is this the most popular show on television if that you're almost guaranteed that the stalker will always win?
I would answer that question with, why did people like watching Roman gladiatorial fights?
Well, I don't know what the win-loss record
I'm going to take a guess that the win-loss record was if you were a slave and were forced to fight gigantic brutes that were brought in by the Roman legions, then maybe you did win. So I kind of view it as people aren't necessarily looking for who's gonna win. They're not saying I want the prisoner who's been told through the media that they are, murderers and rapists and child molesters. I don't want those people to win. None of them want them to win. They just want to see how far they can last and get brutally murdered. This is a blood sport here. It's not even necessarily no one's rooting for them. And I think that's the difference, is that, Killian sees Arnold as well, I can have something where there is more of a back and forth type thing, where maybe the stalkers do get a little bit of, trouble in trying to kill him, which is just going to make my ratings go higher and higher and sell more Cadre Cola, because that's important.
But the thing is, if they've never lost, the stalkers have never lost, they've never exited quadrant 1, right?
Well, no, I think it's necessarily they could escape into the other quadrants. It doesn't necessarily mean that you die, because that happens with Dynamo, right? Dynamo, he isn't killed until the end of the movie, right? And Dynamo is this opera singing fat man in a Tron get up with a mohawk. I kid you not, with a light bright thing. He shoots Sith lightning out of his fingers. But yeah, he they survive Dynamo. He's not killed. So I imagine that maybe, some of the previous runners had either got the slip of them or made it to like quadrant 3, or in the case of, you know, the two that we know did die, we were told like, oh yeah, they passed, you know, they clearly made it to like quadrant 4, but they just were killed. So, you know, we also know further down the line in the movie that, you know, they have the ability to do deep fakes and, you know, traveling mats and digital manipulation to make the audience think that certain people survived and certain people lived. So we don't know. I mean, it could very well be, John, that, you know, they use those means to kind of artificially make the stalkers look like they lost.
I gotcha. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That can make sense. Yeah.
That makes sense. But yeah, Ben Richards, unfortunately, is kind of a dummy because he thinks that Killian will be honest and keep his word. He doesn't. He not only sends him through the Running Man game, but also sends his two friends, Yaphet Kotto and Skinny McSpeckles, also known as Weiss. I'm calling him Skinny McSpeckles because that's kind of what he is in this. Nothing against him, but it's kind of funny. And yeah, they're off to the races in what I find hilarious, and I wanted to ask your opinion on this. What did you think, John, of the suits in the Running Man? You're like,
I'm looking for the words. For our audio listeners, that's what that dead air
they're just
was.
like, what the fuck is going on?
Wait, is this buffering or something? What happened?
No, he's not buffering. His brain's buffering trying to find the word.
Yeah, this is that little Apple.
You just pulled a Mitch McConnell. Your brain's like going,
Yeah. But yeah, how would you describe them?
I would describe them as like if you took the 1980s outfit for jazzercising and like you wanted to be the brightest thing in a game of survival, just go with that outfit. It's literally like spandex that's yellow and purple. That's it, with little hints of red, and you're basically a giant highlighter with an Adidas logo on you, which I thought that was funny.
They got to make sure that that they stick out. I mean, this is television, baby.
It's television, and the stalkers clearly can be hidden by camouflage, but not the runners. No, they're fucked.
It's like why they say, I don't know if this is actually canon for Marvel, but that Wolverine wears yellow in the comics because it makes him more of a target. And since he can heal, they want Wolverine to be one of the first ones seen to protect the other X-Men. I don't know if that's true, but
I don't know if I buy that. That's the same methodology that I heard with Batman. Like the reason why Batman has a yellow insignia on his logo is so that people know to shoot that. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense because one, no criminal is that good of a marksman. And two, what if you shot him in the face?
What if it was Johnny Gobbs, though? I bet Johnny Gobbs got him.
Johnny Gobbs got ripped and took a walk off a roof. You know, no big loss.
No big loss, yeah.
Oh, shit. All right, so the first stalker that they deal with is Sub-Zero. Dun, dun.
Yeah, I wonder if Mortal Kombat got any shit from TriStar Pictures. Like, you stole that from us, but oh well.
Not really, because Sub-Zero in this movie is what he's basically he's a professor, no less. They called him Professor Sub-Zero, and he
get his title right.
Yeah, get his title right. Get it right. And his whole deal is he runs around a hockey rink, which I called hockey hell. I wrote down notes here, and uses like a razor lined hockey stick. And the first thing they deal with is Sub-Zero trying to chop off their heads with a hockey stick.
Well, it reminds me of that scene in Back to the Future 2 where like I think it's old Biff is like, something seems really familiar about all this. Like, I wonder when Arnold was making Batman and Robin and he had his hockey goons, like, something seems really similar about all this.
Yeah, he was going like, I have experience on hockey, playing hockey, because I was in the amazing box office movie Running Man in 1987, and we had a hockey seed, and we had a razor lined stick here. So maybe if Mr. Freeze, he has a razor stick too, and he can cut off Batman's feet.
Yeah,
That's
sure,
my
Arnold.
guess.
We're gonna just take this up the ladder, and
We'll talk to
let you
Joel.
know.
We'll talk to Joel. We'll see what he thinks. Yeah. No, it's really funny. The whole sequence of all of these stalkings and kills, and that's the best part I love about the Running Man, is that every one of these are so self-contained. Like, you don't need a plot because each one of these is its own self-contained thing. And I actually wrote down notes. One is that Sub-Zero decides to like throw exploding hockey pucks at them. Did you notice that?
Yeah, as you do.
And he actually has a hockey goal that turns into a mousetrap, and he traps Weiss in it.
It sounds like you're describing an episode of Jackass.
It does sound like Jackass.
I'm Johnny Knoxville, and this is a hockey goal mousetrap.
So Steve-O over here, he's going to run through the exploding hockey pucks and try to jump over and not get caught into the mousetrap hockey goal. But I kid you not, this is all in the movie. And what I love about this is that the way that all these stalkers die is the most like ridiculous way possible. And this is this is the best part of the Running Man. If you take away nothing else from this movie, the best part of the Running Man, and I'm going to go solo shot on this for our video audience. The best part of the Running Man is when a stalker dies and Arnold says a one-liner, because he has one for everyone. So how does Sub-Zero die? John, how does he die? Do you remember how he dies?
It had to do with the razor wire. I know that. I can't remember the specifics though.
Yeah. So he gets razor wire to the neck.
Yes.
And Arnold then announces to the crowd, "Here lies Sub-Zero, now Plane Zero." And then they ask, what happened to Sub-Zero? He was a real pain in the neck. I'm like, come on, you can't do that.
It reminds me of like the polar opposite of the video game series Metal Gear Solid, and all those iterations. When you've beat a boss in that game, like Solid Snake or whoever it is, like goes up to the person, and there's almost like a respect of the fact that this person's about to die, even though they were just trying to kill you. There's some kind of level of like decency and respect paid to the person in their last moments of life. Not so much in this movie. This movie has a guy who revels in murdering people, and he's the good guy. Yeah, he's the good guy. But it honestly makes every one of these kills like a cartoon character. Like I almost am waiting for like the Wile E. Coyote type murder type that thing that happens, because that is how ridiculous it is. And I'm laughing the whole time through it, by the way. And it's hilarious, because imagine if you changed the tone of this just slightly and made it a little bit darker. Like, I'd imagine them remaking this and saying, hey, we're going to go dark and serious, and it just falling flat on its face because it misses this cheesy part of it, which is, the hilarious one-liners and the ridiculous gimmicks that each one of these stalkers has. So I want to see a director's cut of this where we met all the stalkers at home with their like wife and children before they go in to do their job. And it's like, oh, for Christ's sakes, don't be so flippant when you kill Sub-Zero. He has 6 kids. You maniac.
Well, he's probably got 6 kids, and he's also an adjunct professor. So that man is stalking as a part-time gig.
Yeah. He's got a side hustle.
He's got a side hustle in 2017, this future. He's doing adjuncting at the local college, and at the side, he's also a stalker. But after Sub-Zero, we get, well, first of all, Amber gets thrown into the mix, because Amber thinks that she's gonna try to help Ben Richards, which makes no sense, because like he just tried to like kidnap her. But as you said, John, there's nothing to a woman's heart than showing your muscles and the fact that you can lift and destroy, a weight bench that's bolted to the floor.
Well, when
kidnapping.
When you have trapezius muscles that basically are kissing your ears, women can't resist that.
They can't
Like,
resist it.
Now, a suit maker would want to, but not the ladies.
No, but because she works at the channel, she decides that she is going to try to see if she can find any sort of corroborating evidence that Ben had said about not being the butcher of Bakersfield. And she finds the raw footage, but is captured and sent to the games. And she's sent at the time when you've got 2 new stalkers that are sent out, Buzzsaw and Dynamo. Let's talk about Buzzsaw, John. Do you want to describe Buzzsaw?
Well, I know that he got a, shall we say, unwanted vasectomy.
An unwanted vasectomy. Well, his whole gimmick, and I don't know, the play on words here, is that he has a chainsaw for a hand.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
and I say for a hand. He's not Ash from the Evil Dead, but he carries around a chainsaw and he rides a motorcycle. That's it.
Which, I don't know, between the last guy who's on ice skates and this guy on a motorcycle, you think that those two things would be very easy to fuck them up on? You know, if you can get something in his tire spokes, or, you can just simply knock down somebody on ice skates. Like, I don't know. These stalkers appreciate the showmanship, but they're kind of putting themselves in danger with a couple of these things. But
well, it's true. I mean, if you think about it, let's say you're, the balancing you have to do with holding a chainsaw while also riding a motorcycle. Like, think about that. You're running around, driving a motorcycle, then you're also holding a chainsaw and trying to get people off. Like, that's a lot to do as a stalker. A lot of balancing to do there. But yeah, Buzzsaw, his whole thing is his chainsaw. And Dynamo, oh my God, I mentioned it before.
Yes.
Dynamo is an opera singer covered in a light bright who drives around in a go-kart and shoots Sith lightning from his hands.
No.
Well, I was waiting for him to go into the power of the dark side shootout, because this movie came out in 1987. So clearly they saw Sith lightning come out of Emperor Palpatine's fingers in Return of the Jedi. So they knew, hey, this is a thing. But yeah, he's a ridiculous stalker. I don't know why he would not be like a tier 1, because he's so ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know if he's tier 3 because he's got a car, or not a car, but
He has a go-kart.
Yeah, which to me, 4 wheels is better than 2 if you're going to be trying to kill somebody. And also probably better to not have a chainsaw on a motorcycle. So I could see how he could be tier 3.
I don't, because one, his go-kart looks like a Tesla Cybertruck. Don't you think it looks just like a Tesla Cybertruck? But it looks like a smaller version of a Tesla Cybertruck. That's why I say it's like a go-kart version, and he's so big, like he's a big man, that he just sticks out like a thumb in the top of the Cybertruck. But it's ridiculous. But yeah, so Buzzsaw kind of takes a whack at him first, no pun intended there. And he actually gets one up on Arnold. He actually drags him for a little bit with a little ropey thing, and then he actually saws a little bit of Yaphet Kotto and inadvertently kills him. But yeah, Buzzsaw, how does he die, John? Do you remember how he dies? You mentioned a little bit ago.
Yeah, as I said a minute ago, he gets a chainsaw to the testes.
And what is his line? One of my favorites here. It literally starts with, "I love this saw. It's a part of me." And Arnold said, "That's all right. Keep it." And sawed him right in his balls. Fuck. And then, of course, they say, what happened to Buzzsaw? He had to split. You
Murder.
can't make these up. Now, Dynamo is where the audience turns, okay? Dynamo is where the audience turns. So Dynamo, he kills Weiss because Weiss gets the special code, all right, to get to the uplink, and he's killed with Sith lightning. All right, that's how he's killed. And how does Arnold try to distract Dynamo? He literally runs through, says, "Hey, Lighthead, hey, Christmas tree." And yeah, his dune buggy chases Arnold, and you've discovered that Dynamo might have the command of Sith lightning, but he can't command a Tesla Cybertruck for shit because he drives up a hill. Did you notice that he drove up a hill like it was nothing?
Yeah.
Like he just decided, I'm going to go vertical, and then is surprised when it flips over and he's stuck.
Well, he thought he had that four-wheel drive and that wrecking peen and steering, you know? Yeah.
Well, it's a Tesla Cybertruck. It's not, a Jeep at all. It's not going to do that. But I was like, this guy must weigh at least 300 pounds, and he's in a go-kart, and he decides he's going to go up a bunch of like rubble and shit. Like, is that what he thought was the smart move? And then, he capsizes, and Arnold spares him. And this is where the audience is like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Right.
And we might be turning. We might like this 7 foot, 400-pound, rock muscled Austrian man.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be an American, I think.
We don't know.
Yeah.
You know what? He's supposed to be an American in everything except for like, red heat. But yeah, he just has the accent. Just it's there. We don't need to know what accent it's from. It's just, middle of America accent. Who knows? California accent.
I'll just say this. At least almost every Hulk Hogan movie, except Suburban Commando, he plays like a retired wrestler because Hulk Hogan's so fucking weird looking that a retired wrestler is all he could possibly be. So they just lean into it. Like, I don't know. Just say that before he became a police officer, old Ben Richards was an Austrian bodybuilder. Just cover your bets.
He Ben Richards was Mr. Olympia. That's all we had to know.
Yeah, he was Mr. Olympia. Yeah.
He was Mr. Olympia from Austria. You don't need to ask any more questions. Yeah. So after this, the crowd starts to turn, and you get this really funny moment. I love this moment where Killian is like, because through all these stalker things, like he's talking to all the audience members, and they get to choose like who this next stalker is, and he's talking to this little old lady who he's like, okay, now tell me, who do you think is gonna die next, and who's your money on? And he says, well, I think Ben Richards is gonna win. And she says, that is a one mean motherfucker. And I'm just like, okay, this is the future here. And 60-year-old woman saying he's one mean motherfucker.
I'm sure they got a little bit of FCC fines, but it's the most popular show on TV. It's all good.
Most popular show on TV. This is also when Killian decides he's going to offer Arnold a stalker deal. And I wrote this down in my notes. This is the best line in the whole movie. John, I don't know about you, but the best line is Arnold's reaction to the stalker deal. Do you want to set this one up? Do you remember this one?
I don't remember word for word, so I would go to the one shot and just
let's go to the one shot. Let's go to the one shot here. All right. So Arnold takes the camera because Killian's like beaming to him and he can see him in the camera. Arnold takes the camera and he says, I live to see you eat that contract, but you better leave enough room for my fist because I'm going to shove it down your throat and hit your damn spine. And every single time I hear that line, I bust out fucking laughing because Arnold's accent, like, it breaks in it. Like, he's saying spine, but it sounds like swine. And I always crack up whenever I hear that line. It's one of my absolute favorites. Just, I live to see you eat that contract, but you better leave room for my fist before I throw it down your throat and eat it out that spine. So good. So good. Yeah. Call them what you want. Knee knockers, thigh slappers, golden nuggets. But our friends over at Manscaped refer to them as the boys. Not every man has children, but every man is responsible for their two boys below the waist. And when your little guys have a little bit more hair than they need, trust Manscaped for all their grooming needs. Boys need love too, so join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com and use the code CINEMA20 to get 20% off and free shipping. You heard it first here. The boys are back in town. Now, John, it's been a little hot, a little tiny bit hot.
You ain't just whistling Dixie.
Yeah. It's been a little hot here in Pittsburgh the past week or so. So I'm going to ask you, how are your boys holding up?
Oh, I'll tell you, when it's 300 degrees outside, give or take a temperature or two, it is nice to have as little body hair as possible. And it used to be, before I had Manscaped, I was completely bald on top above my dick. It looked like Patrick Stewart's head, but my balls always looked like an old timey gold prospector. I don't have to worry about that anymore because thanks to the Manscaped, I can actually keep my balls pretty shaven, pretty clean. And look, every man knows how scary it is getting that close down there below the waist. But that is why Manscaped is always so great for those sensitive areas. Introducing the Lawnmower family, including the Lawnmower 3.0 and the 4.0 and the 5.0 Ultra. Yes, 3 ball trimmers. Isn't that awesome?
It is. It is really awesome. Boys need love too. And for that reason, each trimmer is equipped with skin-safe technology and an LED spotlight and unique features for different grooming needs. Oh, and these babies are waterproof too. Need I say more? For the basic trim, go with the 3.0 and work your way up to the 4.0 and the 5.0 for the ultimate grooming experience.
Take it on the go. Manscaped has you covered. These trimmers come with a travel case and even a travel lock feature to avoid any accidental powering on and off or weird looks at the airport. This right here is the cutting edge of cutting pubes. Upgrade your ball trimmers and your life will follow.
Get 20% off and free shipping with the code CINEMA20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code CINEMA20 at manscaped.com. For the best your boys have ever looked, trust Manscaped.
Naked Nutty Buddies.
And we got our next stalker up. Fireball. Who his gimmick is he has a flamethrower and a jetpack. Yeah, that's it. I know I was wrong. That is when Agnes says to the audience that she's choosing Ben Richards to be the next person to kill because he's one mean motherfucker. And with Fireball is played by, who the hell has he played by? He's played by a football star.
Oh, it's Jim Brown.
Jim Brown. Yeah.
Arguably the best running back to ever play the game.
I'm not a football fan, so I don't know. But yeah, his whole deal is he shoots fireballs with a flamethrower and he has jetpack, which I'm like, that's kind of not fair, but okay, whatever. And yeah, this is where we discover that the previous winners of the Running Man are all dead. Because at the beginning of the movie, we're shown these little clips of the previous winners and how they're living on the islands with naked, bikini girls and drinking Cadre Cola, and turns out they're all fucking dead. And
now, how do they win if they don't kill any of the stalkers?
I'm telling you, they're using deep fakes.
All right, yeah, but in the movie, they I think they even insinuate that the audience has never seen a stalker die. So
they've never seen a stalker die, but that doesn't mean they've never seen a stalker get defeated. And remember, it's like you have to last so much time and get through each one of the quadrants, right? And we also don't. Yeah, so you don't have to kill them, but it could also be that maybe there were stalkers before that we don't see. Like, we don't know if these are the only stalkers, right? So maybe there was a stalker that was killed for some reason. But I also go with this, like, maybe one stalker got retired and they were like, hey, you're going to be killed, but, we're going to retire you or whatever. I think that the digital mat and the whole deep fake shit is how they were able to convince people that these people lived, like that's what I think they did. Yeah. But yeah, Fireball shoots a lot of fireballs. And, the way Arnold kills him is he like knocks out his gas tank and says, how about a light? And he throws a light, he throws a flare at Fireball, causes him to go up in flames.
Yeah, I don't know how Fireball couldn't see that one coming.
Especially he's got a jetpack. And you're like, you couldn't get through that. Like, I just want to think, it's like some of these stalkers have been so complacent. Like, that's the thing too. I think a lot of these stalkers have been complacent, and they're not used to dealing with someone like Ben Richards, who's like smart enough and strong enough to beat them.
Well, it reminds me of the Batman character. What is it? Is Firefly, right?
Yeah, Firefly.
Yeah, but like at least they try to be logical that he would be just riddled with second and third degree burns. Like, I don't know how Jim Brown isn't, playing with fire that up close all the time, how he hasn't burned himself, at least first degree burns, something. But I guess
Yeah, I mean, you know that he has like a fire suit on, but you're right. We don't know if he's, got burns all over his body or something like that. I tend to go with, I think all of these stalkers are like cream puffs compared to Ben Richards. At least that's what I'm looking at. And the next one person up is, I forgot to say what his catchphrase is. He, of course, calls Fireball. He says to him, "What a hothead."
Not his best.
Not his best. That's kind of a C. Got to be honest with you. That's a C on the Arnold pun. It's a C on the Arnold pun list.
It should have been like, as a stalker, he was fired.
He was fired. Shit. Well, after this, the next person that they tried to call up is our old friend Jesse the Body Ventura as Captain Freedom.
I love that these two have made now 3 movies together, and 2 of them came out in the same year.
Yeah. But he's so ridiculous. Like, we get the first hint of Captain Freedom when Amber is doing workouts, because Captain Freedom is no longer a stalker. He does workout videos, and he's just like, "Are you ready for pain? Are you ready for suffering? Are you ready to get into shape?" Like, he's so goofy. It's so good. But yeah, he refuses to go out because I guess the stalkers, like, they all have a gimmick, and I don't really gather what Captain Freedom's gimmick is, because it's like he's got what is it? It almost looks like he's wearing aluminum foil all over his body.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I could, if he came out like wearing like some Captain America type thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'll get it. Or, Soldier Boy or Homelander, if you're into the boys show. If you're not, you don't have an idea what I'm talking about.
You don't know what that is.
But something like that,
But you know what it looked like? It looked like I don't know if you, when you were a kid, you ever tried to play astronaut.
Yep.
But it looks like you took the laundry box soap, like they took an empty box of laundry detergent, and he covered it in aluminum foil and strapped it to his body. That's what it looks like.
I bet the cinematographer fucking loved that.
I'm sure he loved all the reflections.
Surfaces. Yeah.
So many. But he refuses to do it because he doesn't want to wear the ridiculous outfit, and he says that it's nothing because it's the code of the gladiators. Which I'm like, that's such a Jesse the Body Ventura saying. Just saying, this should be blood for blood, code of the gladiators.
I really am surprised that Jesse wasn't the first Dwayne Johnson, because, like, I'm not saying he would have played Lincoln, but like these kind of roles, I'm surprised he didn't get more of these, because there's this in Predator, and really I don't remember him being in anything else again until fucking Batman and Robin. So I don't know.
That's true.
It's kind of like him and Roddy Piper. Like, both of their careers started hot and then fizzled out almost immediately.
Do you think maybe it was because he kind of was like a one-trick pony type deal?
But I mean, there's plenty of roles for that exact character, like very much, supporting characters, because he was like the 5th most important person in Predator. He's the 5th most important person in this movie. Just have him be the 5th biggest meathead. There's plenty of movies, especially in the 80s and early 90s, for meathead guys who can say, like, "I ain't got time to bleed," or it's the Warrior's Code.
Yeah. The code of the gladiators, John.
Code of the gladiators. Yeah.
But yeah, so while this is all going on, Arnold and Amber are captured by Mick, the leader of the Underground Rebellion, and Amber gives Mick the upload code, and they're going to plan kind of a counterattack to finally like take down Killian and the game and everything. While this is all going on, because of the whole Captain Freedom fiasco, Killian decides he's going to use his special tool, and that is the deepfake. Because yes, Running Man invented the deepfake well before we actually had it, which I was, at the time when I saw this movie, when I was a kid, I was like, that is so cool to be able to like replace someone's face with somebody else. And I was like, there's no way in hell that could be a real technology, but here we are, right?
Yeah, that'll never happen. Yeah.
That'll never happen. No, it happens now. But yeah, so what Killian does is to kind of end the game because it's not going the way he wants. He makes it look like Captain Freedom killed Arnold and killed Amber, and the game's over. Yeah, so that's it.
Why don't they just do that from the outset every time?
You would think so, right? But I
just kill the prisoner right away, defake it. Yeah.
Well, it's probably a good chance that not a lot of people survive long enough.
Yeah.
You know, like that was the thing in the beginning of the movie is Killian was tired of all of these running men who were just like easy to die. You know, like they just died within minutes. And he's like, that's not much of a game. It's not going to lead to more ratings and not sell more Cadre Cola. But yeah, I mean, it's a thing where he kind of, shot himself in the foot because Arnold is Arnold and these stalkers are fucking morons.
It is really strange. I think this is supposed to be, I don't think they ever directly say, but I think this is supposed to be like just cable, like this is, or network television.
I think it's network television.
Because, well, the thing is, like back in the 80s, like when Mike Tyson was at the top of his game, like it was pay-per-view, and you like, because you didn't have to fill a certain amount of time if it's pay-per-view. And let's face it, Tyson would knock a guy out in like 34 seconds. You just blew $60 to watch Tyson kill a guy in 30 seconds. But what do they do if this is network television? If the stalker kills the guy in the first 3 minutes of the show, do they just, I don't know, go to an infomercial for the rest of the program?
I mean, I imagine they have more than one stalker. I mean, more than one runner, excuse me.
They probably have on deck.
Yeah, they probably got some ready to go. But like, the whole idea with Arnold as the main runner is just that, he's Arnold. He's not someone who's going to die very easily. He's going to give them a run for the money, which means it's going to cause more people to want to tune in and going to increase the ratings, So I look at it as like this show probably got flatlined in terms of everything prior to Ben Richards being involved. So it's like, well, let's get something a little bit extra, have someone who can fight back a little bit. But obviously they did take into account that it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. But yeah, so Arnold storms the studio and Mick takes over the satellite and he blasts this. I find it hilarious, this message that gets put out, because I'm like, does Mick, like, how is he getting the footage immediately and editing this thing together? Because it's all clips that had been aired previously that night, like he's doing almost an instant replay type deal where he's, I don't know,
but I'm hiring him as my editor.
I was going to say, hire him as your editor because he's really good. He's good as a play-by-play guy in terms of getting that B-roll put together fast. But yeah, it kind of reveals to everyone that none of the runners ever survived, that Killian is evil and the government's bad, and that on top of that, they play the real raw footage of the Bakersfield massacre and basically clears Arnold's name. While all this is going on, Arnold and the rebels are like storming the network, and we get a couple fun things here with this one. One of them being Amber kind of takes care of Dynamo, which is funny. I forgot about this one. She also has a fun catchphrase to him where she calls him a dickless moron with a battery up his ass.
How's he gonna charge it? It's an electronic form of butt chucking.
Yeah, he also has his pants off, like he's gonna try to sexually assault her, because that was a thing. It was the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, she kills him with water because he's Dynamo. He's covered in a light bright and electricity, so he gets completely zapped in the dick.
You think that he would have thought of that? But I mean, I guess like in his quadrant, they probably made sure there's no water anywhere, no sprinklers overhead. But yeah, but you think he would have thought of that? Like, hey, you know what my greatest enemy is? What we're 70% made of,
or even this is open air. So like, what if it rains?
Yeah,
what do you do? What do you do if it rains? You just don't throw Dynamo out because he's not waterproof?
It's probably like baseball games. Like, when it rains like enough, they have to cover the field. They're like, we're on a rain delay here for baseball. It's probably like, well, we're on a delay. So Dynamo doesn't get wet.
Or it could be very much a thing where Dynamo goes out in a poncho with rain boots, poncho, rain boots, the whole thing. Even his little mohawk thing is just covered in plastic wrap because we can't get Dynamo wet or else he'll die. But yeah, Arnold gets his revenge on Killian in the best way possible. Oh my God. In all of Arnold's movies, this might be the best, like, I got you, motherfucker moment. Because while all the shooting is going on, because Arnold's group kind of like infiltrates the place, Killian's left behind, whole audience kind of scrambles, and Arnold says, one of us is in deep trouble to Killian. Because that was a line that Killian had said to Arnold right in the movie, beginning of the movie, when he captured him before forcing him to do the Running Man games. And he's fired down a tube and exploded into a Cadre Cola billboard. And Arnold's last line in the whole movie is, "Well, that hit the spot." I'm like, oh, come on. You can't make this shit up. It's so good. It's so good. But Arnold gets the girl. Don't ask me why. And I would say that's probably one of the weakest parts of this movie. And I'll start with just kind of a little analyzing this movie. But I think one of the weakest parts of this movie is the forced relationship between Amber and Arnold. John, what do you think?
Arnold has to have a case of the not gays. It's the 80s.
You said that before, and I think that's like with a lot of heroes in these movies.
Yeah, and obviously, like, a lot of this is fantasy shit where, like, if you're like a guy that looks like me, you want to just watch this movie and live vicariously through Arnold, because I'm never going to be 6'8" and just rippling with muscles and stuff like that. So I want to, live vicariously through Arnold. So not only do I want him to kick ass and say funny puns, but I also want him to get the girl at the end, because I'm 12 and I'm starting to sprout into puberty. What if I could get a pretty girl too? That would be great. So it's just that living vicariously. It reminds me of the whole James Bond thing. Like, James Bond drinks a bottle of liquor a day and he smokes and he always gets the ladies and he's so cool and can kill people and shrug it off. It's just male fantasy, it's the 80s. So no, it's not earned. But then again, this is Running Man. So I don't know what I expected. There was going to be a nuance to their relationship, but
yeah, I also didn't expect nuance, but I just felt that it was very forced and didn't have any basis in reality. And I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, so let me get this straight. You all bonded over potentially getting murdered. And that is the thing that's going to keep you guys together. And I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense. And there was really no moment in the movie where, you had that kind of like build upon that connection, like to go from, hey, this person kidnapped me, threatened to snap my neck like a chicken's. And that's the literal word he said, chickens, not chicken. And, he's innocent, but he did try to like kidnap me and threaten to murder me. But there's never that moment where we go from that to now I'm kissing your face. And I think that was missing. It's like that moment of downtime where you do get like a little bit of exploration of the romance, if you will, to make it a little bit earned. You know what I mean?
And I would love to say that maybe there's a director's cut out there where there's a scene or two cut, but I really don't think there was. I think they just got to the end of the movie and went, Arnold kisses the girl because it's the end of the movie. But maybe Arnold liked her because she can hide things up her pussy.
I forgot about that.
Where are you hiding that?
Where are you hiding that? Not my asshole. Yeah, that's true. Does hide that up her pussy.
Yeah. We need to leave now. Here, I'll drive. Let me just queef real quick. There's my keys.
Ew, gross. So gross. So gross. Shit. Well, before we kind of give our final thoughts, I did want to take a look at some reviews because I've got some reviews.
Goody.
Yeah, I got some. They're not all terrible, John, because here's the thing. As John had mentioned, Running Man, there's not a lot of depth to this movie. It's a fun romp. Like, honestly, it's fun. Just pure cheese in 80s form. It's great. So there were terrible reviews, but honestly, I didn't think it was fair to use these for this movie. So I just have some like good ones, but also like ones that are like, pointing to a lot of the things we talked about. So let's take a look at some of these here. All right. So the first one, deepfakes were invented 30 years ago in a movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger enters a murder game show and strangles a hockey-themed American gladiator of death and then quips, "He was a real pain in the neck." Movies are just the best, guys.
There really is something to just how unabashed and unapologetic 80s movies are. I mean, sometimes that you watch them now, you go, ugh, but there's a lot of times like this movie where it's just like, it might have sucked to grow up in Reagan's America, but at least in the movies it didn't.
No, in the movies it was very fun. Yeah. And like, there's so much, I don't want to say nostalgia. I don't really have nostalgia for this movie, but there's so much just pure, unadulterated B-movie cheese. This movie feels very much like a B cult film, but it's just done in a way that doesn't take itself at all fucking seriously. And I think that's what makes it different than a traditional like B movie, like The Room or Troll 2, is that we've talked before that those movies, why they work so well is that the filmmakers take their movie seriously. This movie, no one takes anything seriously.
Well, I think the only thing that separates this from like a Roger Corman production is the fact that they got the star power they needed. They got Arnold under contract. I think if this movie didn't have Arnold and had like, I don't know, Eric Estrada, this movie would have been made for 10 times less and been unwatchable.
Surprisingly enough, according to Wikipedia, Christopher Reeve was once attached to play Ben Richards.
Ooh, that would have
been interesting.
It would have been a completely different movie because let's say an Arnold movie's an Arnold movie, but it wouldn't have been that, but it would have, so it would have been completely different. But I want to see that timeline where it's Christopher Reeve in this movie.
That would have been an interesting one. I don't know if it would have been as silly, at all.
Oh God, no.
All right, so let's move on to review number 2 here. She cheated on college exams. She had sexual relationship with 2, sometimes 3 men in a year. Oh my God, this future was so conservative. No wonder they needed Arnie to run around bitch slapping middle-aged fatties and save humanity by tossing an old man through a tube. Here is Sub-Zero, now Plane Zero.
Yeah, 3 partners. Oh, what a whore.
Well, you know what? That is a point there that they brought up is when they were throwing Amber into the games, they had that announcer say that, and it's like, that's not really a big deal, but okay. But it does point to how in this universe, this is kind of like, Project 2025 on steroids.
Well, is it a commentary on like the world that they're living in, or is it more of that's just Ronald Reagan's America? I don't know which one it is.
I think that it's more of a commentary on what was going on at the time that this movie was made and saying, could we amplify that to an 11? You know what I mean? Like, this is at the same time you have like the John Birch Society. You have Reagan, of course, pushing his conservative agenda. You've got
Falwell.
Yeah, you've got Falwell. So I look at it as like you're seeing the religious right kind of gain a foothold of power in the 80s through Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush and all the levers of power. And this is kind of like saying, well, what if they took that and we stretched it out for the next like 30 years? What does that look like? And that's what I'm saying, is it feels kind of creepy and how similar it is to certain right-wing talking points.
Yeah.
Scary shit. Scary shit. All right, let's go to review number 3 here. One of the most eerily accurate science fiction works I've ever seen. This is basically the current reality in 2020. And this was a review from 2020, so it's very poignant. And John, you had already talked about this at the beginning, that this was, kind of, you take into account what was going on with the pandemic. And it feels very eerily similar. Like it does. It's not as science fiction as I would like. This movie, even though it is a comedy, and I view it as a comedy, and kind of an action-packed type 80s film, there's way more depth to this when you view it through post-pandemic lens than I feel comfortable with, personally. Yeah. Like, just upon rewatching, I was just like, this doesn't feel that alien or fictional in our current reality. And that's scary.
This, Idiocracy, and Wall-E are like 3 movies that I'd say like are fairly accurate to where we're heading.
I view this as more accurate than Idiocracy. And I used to say that Idiocracy was pretty damn accurate. But Idiocracy and it doesn't hold a candle to just the pure, unadulterated control of the media and its ability to manipulate people. You know, like that's the thing, is the crux of this movie is media and government can manipulate you to believe whatever the fuck they want you to believe. You know, that's the scary thing about this, is that they can say, like, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger did the right thing, right? As he didn't want to fire on a food riot. And what did they do? They completely twisted the narrative, made the entire public believe that he did do it. And yeah, he was thrown in prison, then had to be a running man. So it's just, it's scary how real this is. You know, just very scary stuff. All right, let's look at our final review. There's a character named Dynamo who's a big guy in a Tron costume with a Centurion helmet who sings opera and has electric powers. I don't understand why he isn't in every movie.
Fair. Absolutely fair. Yeah.
I also don't know why Dynamo isn't in every movie. He absolutely should be in every movie. He's great. Great in how terrible he is.
Even if it's just the most inappropriate thing ever. Like, I think Dynamo should be singing opera in Sophie's Choice. She's trying to pick which kid to off, you know?
Or it could be Dynamo could be singing opera in Godfather Part 3.
Well,
like
yeah, that would be fitting. Yeah,
right towards the end, right before, you know, Godfather, right before Michael Corleone's daughter gets shot, just him singing opera, all busted out like a light bright.
Brian, are you just giving our audience a tease of a future Really That Awful episode?
Are we? Is that on there? I didn't know that was on there.
Godfather 3, Really That Awful?
Oh, okay. That's gonna be interesting because we'll have to, like, I don't know if it's fair for us to watch the coda version or if we have to watch a theatrical version. Because the coda version apparently is better.
I might, even though they're both over 3 hours, I might watch them both just to have a reference point.
You're insane.
But that's
You're
down
insane,
the line.
man. You're insane, man. So, kind of to finish up this episode here of the Cinema Psycho Show, and especially our deep dive into The Running Man, part of Arnold Month, John, I got to ask you, what are your final thoughts on this glorious, glorious 80s movie full of cheese?
You took the word right out of my mouth. It is just spectacular 80s cheese at its finest. Arnold at his finest, you know, just terrible acting, but you don't care because he's so charismatic, and all of his one-liners and just how outrageous this is. And only in a movie like the 80s could you get just such, as I mentioned at the top of the show, casual murder that, like, you just eat it up like, you know, it's nachos on a plate. But no, it's somebody being horrifically murdered, but you're like, yay! So they don't make them like this anymore. I'm not saying this is a great movie. It's Running Man. That's all I'll say. It's not a bad movie. It's not a great movie. It's Running Man. And I think you should go and either rewatch it or check it out if you've never seen it. But I'll make sure you're watching it through the lens of, you know, this is Reagan's America.
Do you think that this might be Arnold's best bad movie out of his whole collection of films?
See, I don't know if I would call it a bad, I guess like B movie, maybe, because that doesn't necessarily mean bad. It just means, you know, not a top tier movie. But I would say B movie, but I would say this is the most Arnold ever gets.
Fair enough. My final thoughts on this is that this movie is amazing. It's an amazing film. Okay. Amazing in the sense that it is so god awfully good and bad at the same time. You know, it is just so cheesy on so many levels, and none of it is taken seriously. And I think that's my favorite part of this. And it's also the reason why I love movies like Starship Troopers and RoboCop, is because they have that social commentary mixed in, but it's also done through this very bizarre, hyper realistic lens. And that's the beauty of Running Man, is that yes, we have the Arnold Schwarzenegger puns. Yes, we have the goofy music and the goofy characters like Captain Freedom and all these stalkers and everything, but it's all through this very real lens that we're looking at through now. So it kind of works on two different fronts, but it's a great movie and an entertaining film nonetheless. Like, it's not preaching at you. It's not trying to say like, yes, you shouldn't watch TV. You shouldn't watch social media. It's not doing any of that, but it is kind of pointing out that, hey, yeah, we're not that far away from this future. And that's, I think, the beauty of The Running Man. Man, I got to say, John, cocaine is a hell of a drug. That's all I got to say is to Richard Bachman, also known as Stephen King. Cocaine's a hell of a fucking drug, because this must have been one that was fueled by cocaine. But yeah, I hope they never remake it. That's what my hope is.
Well, unless it's short story accurate, then I'd be okay with it. But one final question for you. Is this movie more important today than it was when it came out?
That's a really good question. I think that because of our current landscape when it comes to our politics, and also just kind of the problems that we're facing, so not necessarily from pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. I mean, they're the same problems nonetheless, just more amplified. I think that the thing is that this shows that, what might have been considered science fiction, 30 years ago, it isn't quite science fiction anymore. You could replace The Running Man with, I would go with the game show craze in the early 2000s. But honestly, you could replace it with TikTok. You could replace it with social media. You could replace it with Instagram influencers. You could replace it with all of the stuff. Things that are taking our focus away from what's actually happening and serving as opioid for the masses. That's what this movie really is showing. It's not a deep movie, but it's showing that. And I think you can see parallels with it. It's not a commentary on it, but it is clearly saying like, hey, yeah, you're not that far away from this. So I think it's important, but I don't think this movie is necessarily like preaching to you that, hey, you should put your phone down, right? Like, I don't think it's doing any of that. I think it is just showing us a reality that is not that far from where we currently are at. And you could make the argument that we're already there. You know what I mean?
Well, we'll take something that is really not that important as compared to people being like murdered or sent to death game shows. But there was a deep fake of Taylor Swift promoting Trump for president. It was completely fabricated, but a lot of people probably saw that and didn't see the retraction on it and think that, good, bad, or indifferent that she's promoting Trump.
Well, it's a thing where the technology of deep fakes alone present a lot of challenges with just disseminating what is fact and what is fiction. That is a common thing that we're now all dealing with, is really checking where you're getting your information from. And then on top of that, what is the ulterior motive of where you're getting that information from? Because I know for me, like, if you're getting your information from a news outlet that is maybe corporate owned and has certain, influence in certain other things outside of just the media, that is going to influence what stories they cover.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons why, I mean, personally, I don't have cable, but I don't really watch MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, or any of them, because when you really get down to them, they all have some agenda, whether or not you realize it. And I don't really want my news through something that has an agenda.
You know, in other countries, tax dollars pay for like the news, so they don't have any biases and they're not owned by billionaires. What a novel idea.
In other countries, they have things like the fairness doctrine that we had up until the 80s that required that news had to be factual, and on top of that had to present both sides.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Yes, thanks, fucker. Hope you burn in hell. But yeah, I don't want to get into politics. Don't want to get into it.
It's all right, Brian. If they got this far, then we met our metric.
Yeah, if you got into an hour and 15 minutes, you got into an hour and 50 minutes of this episode, hopefully they've met the metric, or they're now composing their hate reviews of this, which that's fine.
I'm gonna type this real quick. Yeah,
that's fine. I don't care. That's whatever. You know, I'm fine with that. You guys hate review all the way. But with that said, John, where can they find you at on the internet?
Let's see, Instagram and over on Facebook. And I am close to putting the finishing touches on my Dark Knight Rises So Many Questions video. I am going to try to get that out here before September 1st. So it still feels like summery.
Smart move there.
Yeah.
If you've enjoyed this episode, do me a favor. This is really important. Share this episode with your friends and your family. Anyone who you might think loves Arnold Schwarzenegger as much as we do, because we really do. We really love Arnold. And honestly, Arnold month, you can't get through all of his movies. But share this episode out. You know, that helps us out a lot. If you want to, you can go to cinemapsychoshow.com/follow. Excuse me. And you can subscribe to to our podcast through your favorite podcast app. You can hit the little follow buttons. We've got a whole bunch of them. We got them there for Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of them. They're all right there. Just hit a button and you can follow us on whatever podcast platform you listen to. Now, if you are watching us on YouTube, hey, thanks for doing that, buddy. Do me a favor, right down there, I think it's somewhere down there at the bottom, hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button, hit the like button, and ring the bell, because all that stuff helps us out. It helps grow this podcast. The algorithm knows what things you might like. And if you do the following, if you do the subscribe, you do the like, you do the bell, that helps us out and grows this show, which is what we want to do. And with that said, we will see you next time.
Well, I sure love every movie Arnold did. I'm just so glad there's not one where he gets pregnant.